Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the work session for the Sierra Vista City Council for April 12th, 2022. We're all here assembled, and so we'll go to the April 14th, 2022 council meeting agenda. And of course, we start that with a call to order, roll call invocation, and a pledge. We got some presentations and awards. We're going to recognize our firefighters for their annual awards. We'll have the WaterWise poster contest, and I need to make sure I have time to talk with the adult lead on that, so we can get it organized. So we're not here for 4 hours handing out pictures and awards. Because we also have proclamation for Sexual Assault Awareness Month, Fair Housing Month, and Education and Sharing Day. So I'm going to be reading a lot of stuff on Thursday.
Good luck, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Okay, next is the city manager report. Chuck, is there anything that you would like to share with us before Thursday?
Yeah, we'll have the usual project updates, but we also received our January sales tax report, and that continues at a robust 9.75% growth rate. So those numbers have been pretty consistent over time. What's pretty significant about that one is usually that number will fall after the holiday season, and in fact, it went up instead. So, so that still looks strong. We'll continue to wait for the other shoe to drop, but in the meantime, things look good. And then, of course, we'll have a JPA board meeting of the CCOM board on Thursday morning, and we're discussing budget there, and I'll be able to update you on that process as well. So those will be the main things.
Okay, and the revenue numbers 9% over January last year.
Yep. 9 3/4.
So since we've been elevated at a number level, is there any idea, looking back in the past, when that number may start to decline? Any type of projection?
Well, Mr. Mayor, we're in unprecedented territory.
I know we are.
In the 36 years I've been here, I've never seen anything like this current situation. I know in the 2008 recession, we were able to project recession numbers when we saw our building permit numbers drop rather precipitously. And of course, that accompanied, higher inflation and that kind of thing as well. But
I guess my concern is I just kind of like to have an idea when it's going to drop, and I would hope, obviously I'm hoping it will continue to sustain itself. But at some point in time, if it doesn't drop, we need to have discussions about, and this is I'm sure 6 months or more, probably next budget year, not this coming budget year. Talk about what we do if they remain high. We may want to look at tax reductions of certain types. So again, that's wishful thinking. I certainly expect that the next 6 months they will decline gradually, and then we'll be back to where we were, where we're not getting dramatic growth, because that's what we're talking about, 9%. If we had 3% or 2%, I wouldn't even be talking to you right now.
Yeah. Well, right now we're still projecting over $5 million in general fund balance at the end of the year, which are also record levels. Some of the adjustments we're making are increasing our growth projection for the general fund next year up to 7.5%. I would be reluctant to take it higher than that.
Sir, you had a comment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to ask, is a lot of this increase attributed to the online sales tax that we're now getting, or did we got that last January also?
Well, that is still a factor in helping the situation, but it's really difficult to say why. I mean, a lot of cities in the state are experiencing the same thing we are, and the state budget is as well. So people are spending money, whether it's printed or otherwise.
That's the other concern I have is I know that a lot of folks got a lot of federal money within the last several months, and that money is going to be spent. When that federal money goes away, I think you can see the same in revenues. We just don't know whether that's going to hit gradually or all at once, or so that's a concern.
But I like your idea, Mr. Mayor, taking a look in 6 months, and if it
Well, that's the thing
remains,
is
seeing
that
how it remains.
we need to kind of level out and see where we are before we really address any potential tax cuts, but that's something we need to think about.
Yes, sir. I mean, you do have two, pretty large obligations out there with the
Yep.
public safety retirement system, and of course, your street maintenance budget needs everything it can get as well.
Okay, Chuck, anything else? Okay, let's see, under new business, then we go to item number 2, and possible action on the March meeting minutes. Any comments for additions, deletions, corrections on the meeting minutes for March? Okay. Item 3 is discussion of
Stone Garden.
Stone Garden, yeah, there you go. Item number 3, Stone Garden, again, the grant, Chief Thrasher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The resolution before you is to accept a grant from the Arizona Department of Homeland Security through the Open Operation Stone Garden Program. This is essentially a renewal of grants that we've had in the past. Operation Stone Garden, state and local partners are paid overtime to help enhance provide overlapping layers of protection in the border secure areas. So this grant will pay for overtime in the amount of $83,913 and for employee-related expenses related to that, and $12,460 for mileage. Currently, we deploy regularly with Border Patrol as part of their regular operations Stone Garden deployments. We are also currently using these funds to participate in the Operation Safe Streets with the Cochise County Sheriff's Office, Border Patrol, and Homeland Security investigations. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for Chief Thrasher? Yes, ma'am.
You answered one of them, so thank you for that. And my question is, with the increase in activity that we're seeing concerning border-related issues, this looks to be about the same amount that we got last year, I think, close to it.
It's a little bit of an increase
Okay.
over last year, and that's to make up for some of these additional deployments.
Okay, and that was the question, is do we think this is enough to cover additional officers needed for that task force and additional activity that can help with that?
I do at this moment. Typically, we actually don't expend all the expenses anyway on regular Stone Garden deployments, so the additional deployments will use up those funds, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Gregg asked one of mine. Thank you. Second one, do we have designated officers that are assigned to do Stone Guard? Or is just when someone's, like with what happened yesterday, someone got into that situation, so now that'll go towards them, or how do we
They
identify?
have deployments, sign-up deployments, and
Okay.
the officers sign up for overtime for those particular deployments,
Okay,
both for the Safe Streets and the Operation Stone Garden deployments.
outstanding. Thanks, Chief. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
And I see that we've got PRS covered.
It is covered as part of the employee-related expenses.
Thanks.
That's key thing. Thank you.
It's important, you're right. Okay. Yes, sir.
I think you asked all my questions except for one, just to expand on the people who can sign up for it. Is it limited by their position, their rank, or is it open to anybody?
It's usually open to sergeants and below.
Okay, sergeants and below, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Anything else? Thank you, Chief, appreciate it. We now move on to item number 4, and it's discussion restating the city's commitment to fair housing in Sierra Vista. Mr. McLaughlin.
Send out a proclamation.
It's both.
Well, there's a proclamation. We do a
Okay,
proclamation.
all right.
We actually do it backwards. Do the proclamation first, and then we do the resolution, or we should do the resolution
Sure.
first and then the proclamation.
Okay, wonderful. So this is a resolution that we bring forward every year to, like you said, restate the city's commitment to furthering fair housing, making sure that renters are not discriminated against based on a protected class. We provide literature at city facilities, across city government. We provide resources to people that it's very rare that we do receive a complaint. I can't think of any, frankly, off the top of my head. It's more landlord-tenant issues, but there are resources we could connect people with should there be a complaint.
And the key thing is we need to have this to be able to qualify for any federal housing money.
That's the bottom line.
Okay. Any questions? Alrighty. Item number 5, accepting a warranty deed. Again, Mr. McLaughlin.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, as stated in the memo, the city is pursuing grant funding for making accessibility improvements within our transit service areas. One of the projects involves installing curb, gutter, and a multi-use path along the eastern side of Judd Street. To make that happen, we needed about 0.81 acres of land from Los Arcos LLC. They were gracious enough to donate the needed property, which will widen the public right-of-way from 25 feet to 52 feet to help us accomplish those improvements. And there's no cost to the city, and we request that you accept the warranty deed for recording.
Okay, and that basically covers the area on Judd Street from, it doesn't quite go to Golf Links, but about halfway north from Golf Links to,
From Timothy Lane to Busby Drive.
Timothy
It's
Lane
full
to Busby
extent.
Drive, so.
Right.
And that will basically put sidewalk all the way essentially through the neighborhood to Golf Links as well.
Yes, we were notified last summer that we received FTA funding to install sidewalks along both sides of Carmichael Avenue from Busby to Timothy Lane, and we're also installing a multi-use path along the full extent of Timothy Lane from Carmichael to Judd Street. So this will complete the loop around the Solgar neighborhood.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. And other than the call of the public and, of course, comments of council, that concludes the meeting for Thursday. We'll now move on to one of the main attractions here today, item B, Schneider Electric Phase 2 presentation. We'll start with Madam Assistant City Manager.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council. I'm very excited to present this project to all of you. This has been a significant amount of staff time over the past almost 1 year, meetings every 2 weeks. For that whole time with a large staff team and our partner Schneider Electric, who we've got 2 here today, Tyler DeLalla and Brandon Woodward, who are behind me. They're available for questions. Our staff are available for questions. So as always, please don't hesitate to stop me at any time if you have any questions. Okay, very quick recap on what are we talking about when we look at a capital recovery and reinvestment program. So this is the second type of project we would do like this. So we work with a partner like Schneider Electric, who are generally referred to as energy savings companies or ESCOs. And they have to go through and identify and capture energy and operational savings and revenue that would then in turn pay for improvements to your city, whatever you decide to do. So we have done something of a hybrid project in our first project, and we're proposing another one with the second one, which takes energy savings generating projects and leverages those projects and the energy savings against revenue generating capital projects, things that'll modernize the city, drive economic development. Those are the things that council had asked us to do with the first one and that we are looking at doing again with the second one. So what that does is it provides a solution then that allows the city to construct a significant number of projects at one time in a relatively short period of time that we would not be able to do on our own. If we tried to do each one of these projects ourselves, it would take us quite a long time. It's actually in state statute that Schneider has to prove that the energy savings, operational savings, revenue will pay for this project over time. So just to quickly recap what we did once more and some of the results from our phase 1 project. So going back to 2016, 2017, council had approved a new economic development plan for prosperity. One of the goals in that plan was prioritizing sports tourism. And so the first project that was developed, 5 soccer fields were turfed at Sierra and Domingo Paez. LED sports field lighting replaced all of our old lighting at 17 fields and courts around the city. We balanced that with energy improvements like replacing almost all of the light lights and fixtures in city buildings and properties, 3,500 LED replacements. HVAC upgrades, we replaced 9 HVAC systems. There was also a significant amount of deferred maintenance that the city has in capital projects after coming out of the recession. We installed new electrical infrastructure at Veterans Park to better accommodate flexibility during events and accommodate vendors. We replaced the wave machine at the Cove, and we did a small project out at wastewater to upgrade aeration controls. So that project was just under $14 million, and Schneider guaranteed about $740,000 in projected annual savings and revenue. Through the course of the past 3 years, we have realized just in electricity savings alone, $482,000. Our Parks and Rec and Library Department and Economic Development has worked hard to track the amount of economic impact from the tournaments they brought in, and they've identified about $3.3 million. If you average that over 3 years, it equates to about $1.2 million a year, and so Schneider Electric has more than proven that their estimates are conservative when we look at projected savings and revenue. And in other numbers from Parks and Rec and Libraries, that was 28 additional tournaments that was brought in and almost 11,500 additional people to the community. So I think we can say pretty clearly that the first project worked, and so now it was time to look at the second project.
Question?
The revenue from the Snyder project, that's going back into the general fund? Or where's the revenue going?
So the revenue was a combination of, most of it was TPT.
PPT, okay.
So, yes.
Answer is yes.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Some in the capital improvements fund.
Okay. Thanks, John. So why did we work with Schneider Electric, though, on a second phase project? So in your current strategic plan and the Parks Master Plan that was adopted last year, there were 8 specific goals that are related to portions of this project. And so some of the goals hit planning and managing for water resources, economic development goals that mentioned things like EV charging, emerging technologies. We did a lot of work looking for smart city projects that could be included in this project. There's a goal in the airport. There's an airport project included in this. And then 5 different goals on sports tourism, the Veterans Park Sports Complex, increasing sports tourism revenue, Parks Master Plan, funding the Parks Master Plan. So I think you can see where we're going. 8 different goals, which have guided our development of this project that we're presenting to you. And so what are we trying to accomplish with this project? So first, kickstarting the Parks Master Plan. This project includes $15.1 million of parks improvements to go after that Parks Master Plan that was approved last year. This would initiate the development of the Veterans Park Sports Complex. It would provide the community with some new athletic amenities that Parks and Rec and libraries can then turn around and use to attract more tournaments and meets and so on, thereby increasing sports tourism. We can address some additional aging infrastructure in city buildings. We can launch an electric vehicle pilot program for the community and guests that support our sports tourism efforts. We can continue to advance our energy and water savings commitment. And again, look at increasing direct revenue and economic impact, hitting most of the areas of your strategic leadership plan.
On the EV, we've discussed this in previous meetings, and would this be a city project, or would it be done by a private company to put these charging stations in?
I'll get into all the details of the project as we go through here, but it would be another company putting it in who would then be doing the parts, the labor, the maintenance, the customer service if somebody had a problem. And so, yes, it would be another company.
All right, thank you.
So we think of all of the projects individual projects in this project is fitting into one of three buckets. So we're hitting sports tourism in the Parks Master Plan again, and you can see how these projects fall under that bucket: economic development and efficiency and infrastructure. So I'm going to go through each of these in detail, what we're doing for each project and why and what it's going to address and do for the city. Okay, first, under sports tourism and the Parks Master Plan. So one of our largest project is addressing the football field and track at the Veterans Park Sports Complex. So this would be a complete synthetic turf replacement for the football field that is currently out there in pretty bad shape. It will do a turnkey rubberized sports running track and with everything that goes with it. So we can offer a facility for comprehensive track meets, ADA compliant path around the entire sports complex for access. And you can see the list of all of the specific improvements for the field and track at what would be the Keith Hampton Memorial Field.
I'm sorry, did you say it would be fenced in, like the soccer fields?
It would also be fenced in, yes.
I think the entire thing, like the walking trail, like people use it to walk, every day. There are people on it. Would they not be able to get to that anymore?
We talked.
Ms. Wilson?
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Humphrey. Because this is situated where our sports division building is currently located, this particular field, we are planning to have it open during the day until about 9 p.m. at night, and later if it's under reservation. But that would allow folks to come and kick a soccer ball around, kick a football around, utilize the track, things like that.
Okay, so it'll open
Early in the morning.
whenever, I don't know when they started.
Well, I
with
just
it.
say it needs to be open early in the morning, especially in
Yeah.
the summer months.
Right,
Operationally, we would love to do that. We're excited. We would do that.
okay. Thank you.
Nope, she answered it.
Okay. So this would include the new Howard Field. If you recall from our Parks Master Plan, the existing Howard Field would be moved over to this current field, and so that's why this is being referred to as the new Howard Field. So this was something that the LWCF, when we received the grant earlier this year, asked to include this in the project. The field out there is not usable as it currently is. It's oriented towards MLK Boulevard. No drainage. We can't have balls going into MLK. So this project would design and install a completely new Howard Field. It would turn it to face into the complex. It would provide everything for a turnkey baseball and softball field to include dugouts, the backstop netting, new bleachers, the curbing, security fencing, and so on. The project would also add all new LED sports lightings. There are no lights in this facility at all, so it's currently not usable in the evening. This is an important addition, as we did in our last project. We would light the picture on the bottom left. The red circles are where the lights would go. So it would light the football field. It would light the tennis courts. It would light 2 new basketball courts, which are included in this project, the softball field, the sand volleyball court, and the existing baseball field there. So important to allow our sports teams to play into the evening.
Victoria.
Yes.
Or Mrs. Schreiber, sorry. Maybe I'm missing it, or maybe I'm forgetting that we did something. Are those 6 tennis courts up to par and where they should be as far as playable and usable? And
They're not in great shape, but
They're usable, but they're not in great shape.
okay, then that would lead to the question: is while we're doing all this, was it just a decision made not to include those, or?
we were looking at other priorities for
Okay.
the space, and so no, we just didn't include it in this part of the project.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, the project would also add, as I mentioned before, 2 all-new basketball courts. Through experience, the basketball courts we have in the city are extremely well-used and is one of the most requested things asked for during public processes, so adding 2 new ones. The ADA pathways were also requested by state parks through the LWCF grant, so fully accessible. Also, the new well storage tank and booster pumps are included in this project, so that would fix the well, fix the storage tank, and all new irrigation lines. So we'd finally be able to fix the irrigation and supply the water for this complex and be able to use the fields. Finally, the 20-plus-year-old evap coolers at the gym and the ductwork, we really struggled with this one because the building is not in great shape. And we went back and forth on whether we do HVACs or we do evap coolers. And since we don't currently know the long-term plan for this facility, the decision was made that the evap coolers are in terrible shape. The picture doesn't even quite do it justice, but they're hanging by chains off the side of the building. And so this will upgrade them in the ductwork. It'll make them less of a safety hazard. It will also improve the cooling in the gym. We wanted to stick with evap coolers for right now because of the moisture content in the floor and taking care of that. So we did include that. It is not a major cost factor in this project. Okay, looking a little more specifically at the EV chargers. So this would be a pilot program, again, in strategic locations to help enhance sports tourism and economic development efforts. So this would be 8 charging stations. They would be located at the locations in the table at the bottom. So one of the level 3 rapid chargers at the Veterans Park Sports Complex, 2 chargers, a fast and a rapid charger at the Stone Complex, another fast and rapid charger at the library, and another fast and rapid charger at Sear Park. So I mentioned it before, but the company that would manage these is called EV Connect. Included in this project is 5 years of parts, labor, and maintenance. We can always, the Schneider Electric did a lot of research on the prices charged for the energy around other communities in the state, and they're recommending them set at a level that would keep us competitive but recoup the cost of putting in the EV chargers. The cost of the energy is completely up to us, so we can change that if we want. And then after the 5 years is up, we can either choose to continue the maintenance contract, we can take it over on our own, we can find another third-party company. I suspect we would elect to continue with a future maintenance contract, so we would not have to deal with it. So.
I just want to make a comment. On the chart on the bottom left, you got Sports Complex, Stonefield Library, Sear Park. Those are all great locations. We still own a piece of property downtown that I think we should sell, at least part of it, which is right in the middle of downtown where they need chargers as well. Was there any consideration given to having maybe 5 chargers in that location?
Mr. Mayor, we plan to look for more grants for EV chargers. Both, we can possibly apply for grants to this project and for future ones if this works. That was a location that was looked at for a phase 2. Okay. Now that Fry Boulevard, that section at least in front of it, is completed, and looking at other things both there and on North Garden, there is an EV charger over at the Best Western, but I believe it's for guests of the Best Western. So staff has started looking at that area for locations to add more EV chargers if this works.
And that's one thing I would suggest to you too is, as this program gets up and running and it's productive, another potential is to address hotels, especially where there are more than one, hotels, restaurants, et cetera, where people will be spending time. And I can think of at least 3 locations. We may want to partner with the hotels or introduce our service provider to the hotels so they can install those as well and keep it private.
Absolutely, and I think the Fab Avenue and Fab and Fry property is a prime location for the next round of EV chargers.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's two types of chargers currently. Are these going to facilitate both, or are we looking for one style, or? what's
Mr.
the-
Benning, that may be a little past my capacity to answer, but are you talking about, there's a difference between Tesla
Yes, ma'am.
and I believe these would accommodate Tesla's. Tyler? Tyler's shaking his head yes.
Well, and also, Mr. Benning, that Tesla has, in the vehicles, has adapters to other types of chargers, so it makes sense to use the more generic, chargers for this type of purpose.
And I found there's actually a Tesla charger on the west end.
Yes, there is.
There is.
Still can. And then, do we get a residual? How's the pricing going to work for these? I know you said the maintenance, but a lot of companies, I don't want to say who, a lot of companies are leasing the space by offering a residual on the price they charge for the electricity. So basically, the city would get a percentage of the cost the patron spends on electricity. But there's no, besides the space where they're being installed, there's no cost to the city or the area that they're being installed. Did I say that right? I hope.
That's beyond.
Okay, well,
my-
that's all.
But
Well, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Benning and Brandon, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the way it works is, and my son's a good example, he has a Tesla and he parks it at his apartment complex, but it's another company that runs it. So the apartment complex charges a premium so that they can recoup the costs and at least make money on a residual over and above the actual costs associated with the electricity and the maintenance of the charger itself. So is that okay?
That's what I was making sure, so we're
I'm
good.
glad
We're on the
Chuck's
same
son
series.
recently bought a Tesla.
Yeah, I'm learning more about these than I ever
Oh,
cared to know.
And emails daily. You need to do this, you need to do this.
Thank you. I had the same question. Thank you for clearing that up about the different chargers. My next question is the markings, right? So the chargers that we do have currently in the city that are at the hotels are poorly marked, and anybody can park there. That's a big problem because somebody comes up with an electric car, somebody's parked there, they go inside the hotel and they say it's not our problem. We're not the vendor, right? So are they going to be situated, or is it budgeted to at least mark them off with extra paint or lines that say, hey, please be nice and don't park your car here if you're not going to use it, right? Don't park your diesel Suburban there.
EV only parking,
Right.
or charging for EV only.
And I know Tesla's getting real creative, and they have the little barriers that come up. I don't know if they're going to be that high speed in our city or
Oh, we
not,
don't
but
know.
And move them to the back of the parking lot, because then no one's gonna want to park there anyway.
This was a topic of discussion,
Okay.
and so we tossed out some ideas like putting up a sign that said, please be polite, move your car when it's done charging. So I'm sure we'll be able to come up with
I'm
something.
just trying to get these all up front before this starts happening.
Man, $500 fine.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Rodriguez, it's a good question. It's our intent, though, to be able to market these items to out-of-town guests. So, obviously, like Tesla, there are websites where you can show that, if somebody's traveling in an EV, they can see that there are charger sites available, on their mobile app or whatever. So that's the hope, and then we'll be able to use that in our marketing and tourism campaigns as well.
And I will share a story that Brandon shared with us about a friend coming to visit from California who wanted to visit this area because Brandon talks about us so often, who has an EV and elected to stay in Bisbee because there were no EV chargers available.
Ouch.
We have one.
So,
The Chevron has one now. The new Chevron has
oh,
one.
good.
So we're growing. I want to talk how you got here from California, where he's.
So we can help. We can help
Offline.
with that.
Okay.
Okay, the project at the airport. So this is a project that had come up on the capital list anyway, and we had asked Schneider Electric if it was possible to include this in the project. So it turns out that, yes, replacing really outdated light bulbs does have some energy savings, as we found out in the first one. So staff worked very closely with the fort on this one. This is something of a joint project between Sierra Vista and Fort Huachuca. So currently there's a lack of centralized control from the control tower for the runway lights. There, over the course of many years, there's now 4 different runway light manufacturers out there. There are ongoing maintenance problems. The old bulbs have long passed their useful life, so this is a much needed project that we were able to include in here. So the new solution would replace all of the failing runway lights and signs with LED lights, as well as replace over 8,000 feet of fiber all the way across the airport. So Carol Thompson at the airport approved this project and the vendor, and we actually worked with her to switch vendors because she didn't. There were some issues with the first one, so we worked very closely with Fort Huachuca on this one.
And I'll just mention it's a good way to once again show that the Post that this is a joint use airfield.
Yes.
And we are indeed partners. We're not just going along for the ride on their dime. So I think that's important.
And there's actually a little bit of money that Fort Huachuca will need to pay to upgrade their side, and so this helps them and it helps us at the same time.
Goes along with that beautiful new sign we got. Fix the lights now too, we're good.
Another exciting part of this project, so smart irrigation systems with flow sensors at 19 different city parks and fields. So this would be a centralized remote access with weather-based controls that will allow the watering of our parks and landscaping to be controlled very strictly based on weather and needs, and would save 4.6 million gallons of water every year. And our irrigation system is getting pretty outdated.
Yeah, aged.
Yeah, so much needed upgrade that will save us quite a bit of water.
And I'll just make another comment. This is the same kind of system that was put in a couple years ago at the Pueblo del Sol Golf Course, as well as the college campuses out as well. And they're still showing significant savings in water usage, and they're still beautiful campuses, and as well as the green golf course. And so this will be great for our grass areas that the general public enjoys, because we do have a requirement for new housing on the limited square footage side in the backyards as well. So this is a great green space and a way to be efficient with water.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I can say that, and Laura would absolutely agree with me, that our staff spend a lot of time fixing our irrigation as well.
Yep.
Okay, the Cove. There's some very interesting projects at the Cove here, which is some significant energy savings that were found. Not a lot visible from the front of the house, but in the back of the house, there's been some significant mechanical needs that have been needed for some time that staff have also been looking at and working out ways to afford. A new pump system was also on the list for consideration for capital projects this year. We were able to include that in the project, but there's actually 3 pretty exciting projects at the Cove that will renew these systems and give us a long time with very well functioning systems at the Cove. So what these are specifically, the filters, the chemical generation, and the pumps. This would be an all-new on-site chemical generation system. So we'd save money in buying chlorine and the other chemicals that go into that, because it would all be generated in a self-contained system. New pumps and motors with smart controls, complete upgrade, it's much needed. And then a new filtration system with fully automated controls. The filters currently, somebody has to physically climb into them to replace them and clean them. It's not the safest thing for our staff to be doing, so much needed upgrade. And also the system would save more water, about 1.4 million gallons of year again, for a total of about 6 million gallons of water between this project and the smart irrigation project. So back of the house at the Cove, but much needed, and we'll take the Cove much further in its lifespan.
I just want to make a comment too, is when you talk about lifespan, that's the key thing, is that's been there for over 20 years, well over 20 years. And when you got chlorine and other chemicals in systems, there's constant upkeep, constant cost, et cetera. And if we don't do this now, we're gonna have bigger, in this manner, we're gonna have bigger costs to just maintain minimum service at the cove.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor, and all of these systems are approximately 20 years old, so it is definitely time.
Yep.
Okay, a project that was in our current fiscal year's capital improvement plan covered parking. We've talked to many different companies over the years about solar covered, just solar covered parking, et cetera. We were able to work in a project here that will actually pay back for itself by adding solar parking in 4 different areas. The police station is included in that as planned this year to cover their special vehicles that are exposed all year round. It would add some additional covered parking at the police department. It would add 2 different areas of solar at City Hall, one on the roof, one on the northwest side where the staff vehicles are parked here all day. Over at the Cove, there would be some solar covered parking, and at the library.
Victoria, I'm sorry. Ms. Sharper, I'm going to get it right in council meetings one day. On the solar, we have talked about affordability, and I asked you about that yesterday, and that's fine. Do we know how much electricity that those would generate, and where would they generate electricity for us?
I can tell you that the electricity generated is on the slide.
Would it be in the sites where they're at?
Do you mean how much energy will each of those sites generate?
And where?
Sorry.
Well, I think the question is, and let's just use the Cove as the example.
Yes.
We got the Cove, we got two arrays in their parking lot. Those arrays will be generating electricity. Are they gonna immediately go to service the Cove? Or how's that gonna work? Is that what you want?
That's what I'm asking.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I'm not sure that that's how it works, but let me ask our experts.
I'm sorry,
Tyler, do you want to come up here for a second? So at the location where energy is being generated, does the energy go then to generate it for that facility?
Or does it go to the electric company and the electric company gives us a cutback?
It depends on how much is actually being used by the facility. So if the solar generation, if it's, the building is, it can consume all the energy, but there could be times where, hey, there's more solar than what the building's consuming, and therefore then we'll go back to the grid. And then at that point, they actually get a credit going back to the grid when you're generating more than what you're actually consuming. Does that answer your question?
That does. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler.
Oh, sorry.
Come on back up.
I know every time I'm sorry. I don't know if this will be an issue or not, but when I see the solar parking in other places, they're pretty high. They're pretty, they can block a view. So if we put it right in front of the library like that, will it block like that beautiful building? Or should we move it somewhere can we put it not directly in front of it?
I'd be happy to find out the height of these structures.
Yeah.
And to find out if it's possible to move it somewhere else.
Like anywhere else. Over here.
Where it faces the bypass instead?
Yeah, just not like that.
Okay.
Will that work, Ms. Humphrey?
Yeah.
I'll find out how tall and if we can move them.
And if you can move them, yeah.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, another project that we're very excited about included in this. We've had problems with City Hall's roof for many years, but due to the size and the expense, we've done our best to patch the roof as much as possible. over the past few years. This is more than $1 million total for this entire project, but there are some energy savings that go with it as well, so it made sense to look at including it in this project. So this would be a full roof replacement. The current roof is over 40 years old. This would replace both the flat and the metal portions, and then the decorative siding that goes around it. It would give us a 15-year warranty and allow us to put solar on part of the new metal roof. All right, getting close to the end here. This project would also replace the sports division building HVAC units. The reason why we didn't do these in the last project is because we didn't own this property yet. We were right on the cusp of approaching the school district to purchase it. And so since we didn't own it, we couldn't replace those HVACs. So we're able to include the replacement in this project. And then Schneider also took a look at all of our buildings, and much as you would in your home, and see if there's any light coming in around your windows or your doors. They're able to look at the building envelopes of our various buildings and do some improvements in 17 of our buildings to increase our energy efficiency, which will generate some more energy savings. Okay, the price tag on this entire project. So this comes in at $25.9 million. The city has received $1.5 million from the state parks and through LWCF grant, $1.5 million. So that's about $24.4 million after the LWCF grant. What Schneider has estimated is about $2.2 million annually in utility and O&M savings, about $314,000, $223,000 of direct revenue, and then $1.7 million of capital cost avoidance, or things that we would have had to budget to replace capital-wise otherwise. They've identified life cycle savings of $37.3 million. That's savings, revenue, and avoided cost over 25 years. And their estimate on the economic impact over 25 years of this project is $101 million. And you can see how the cost breakout works between the sports complex, the cove, the covered parking, the roof, and then some of those miscellaneous projects.
And earlier you said the annual projection for sports tourism was how much? If we continue at the same rate, was?
So Mayor, what I reported at the beginning of the presentation was that we'd realized about $3.3 million over the past 3 years.
So that's $3.3 million a year.
Over 3 years.
That was 3 years.
Over 3 years.
Oh, we would
So
hope to
we're talking
increase that.
1.1 then annually, roughly.
Roger.
And we would expect sports tourism to increase. So basically, we're kind of breaking even with a 1.865 over 20 years. I think we can get there. That's what I'm saying. Based on sports tourism to balance this. So it should just about pay for itself. Sir.
I'm trying to think of your math, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. I was looking at a total of $3.3 million annually from.
It was over a 3-year
1 and
period,
2.
wasn't it?
Yes, it's over a 3-year period.
19, 20,
Yeah, but that's for project number 1. Project number 2
Yeah, but
is-
what I'm looking at is what I would ask is, what is the annual impact for sports tourism?
Exactly.
And to me, that sounds like it's about $1 million point something,
Per year?
yeah, per year.
Well, the 3-year estimate that, that Ms. Yarborough just reported was also during about a year and 4 months of closures
Okay.
during that
So
period
it's
as
gonna
well.
be,
And it was
that's my
also an
point, it's gonna be
average.
more than that.
Yes.
So
Roger.
if we continue to attract sports tourism and that remains a program, this should come close to paying for itself, which means my favorite phrase, no new taxes.
I agree, Mr. Mayor, sounds good to me.
We're pretty damn close to it, and we're still getting the quality, we're still being able to maintain the quality. That's the other thing is, with these facilities, has the ongoing maintenance been included? Obviously, I'll use the Cove as an example. We just said it's 20 years old, and it's had parts and pieces changed out already, and it's gonna continue to have parts and pieces changed out already. So long-term maintenance is still gonna be an issue for us to deal with, I think, even if we have a very successful sports, tourism program. So that's something for us to think about too. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For things like, and so we don't have to, I say rehash something that we talked about. So things like the artificial turf, we're using the same product, same everything we have on the other fields with the same life cycle, or do we know?
Actually, this would be a different type of turf with a different company, and one that is specifically geared towards football, but is also quite acceptable to play soccer on.
With the same, now the life cycle for that is the same amount of time as the previous that we have on SAR and we have right now at DM, or is it?
They're comparable. I don't remember what the exact life cycle is on the turf we selected. Maybe Laura does.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Benning. If I remember correctly, the company that will be used actually has a 10-year warranty on the turf itself, where our current product has 8. And then it also has the extended life cycle warranty on the base of it, which I believe is upwards of 25 years.
Okay.
So the first couple of replacements, and maybe even more, you'll only have to replace the top turf area and not go all the way down into the base.
Okay, and to follow on with that, I know at the other fields we have the spray canyon to keep them moist, keep them wet with our sun. Are we gonna have the same thing at the football field or?
Water cannons,
The water cannons.
absolutely.
Okay, we're good.
They're not like
Laura
real
just wants to
cannons.
say
I
water
know.
cannons.
It just sounds good saying water cannons.
I want to just make another comment here. When we talk about this program, to me, for the price and everything else, and the benefits we're getting on water, saving electricity, all that is good stuff. But there are a number of things that this doesn't do that we as a council need to be aware of. One is, and I'll just pick this one out of the hat, and I'm sure there are others we can think of, is pickleball. We have pickleball going crazy in town, and this does not add any additional courts, so that's another future expense. But it doesn't really fit in with energy savings and water savings, et cetera, that we're focusing on here. But there will be other challenges, and maybe phase 3, phase 4, whatever. When those requirements or needs are better refined, we'll be able to address that. Chuck?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this was a large topic of discussion during this process, and clearly the community has a lack of gym space to accommodate, sports like pickleball, and there you're looking at $10 to $20 million expenditure to replace OICC and have a gym and that kind of thing. And I don't think the budget could bear a replacement like that at this particular point in time, but that is certainly a significant expense some future council is going to have to deal with, because OICC is not getting better, and the evaporative coolers on the gym is not going to make that old gym last, much longer either. So how far we can take this remains to be seen yet, but it will be something that we need to deal with, and that can accommodate those types of sports here.
Mr. Do you have something? Mark?
Kind of along those same lines, Mayor. Thank you. Just like we talked about the gym, obviously we have a good futsal program here in the city where it's indoor soccer basically, and they use that same gym. So not many improvements I think are needed to the floor I think right now, but obviously the temperature is a huge problem. It's very hot in that gym, so I think that's one good thing about this program, is that they can still play futsal in there, because that does pick up when the regular soccer season's over. When we talk about trying to bring sports tours and things like that, that is another sport that is pretty big, and there's just huge futsal places around other cities, things like that. But how about the King's Court? Are they going to do pickleball eventually in that area out there? Does anybody?
That's a commercial operation that I don't know if they're planning on it.
Okay, I don't know if that was going to be an option for that side
I
of
would-
town.
I would
Obviously, it's not a
encourage
city
them to
thing
do that.
anymore, but okay,
Yeah, I would encourage them to do that.
okay.
That's a private.
Don't we have pickleball courts also?
We do,
We do.
but they're
Yeah.
always
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 full.
I will tell you, and it's folks my age and younger, and just younger, so other than Greg, probably everybody doesn't know this, but there are people out there everywhere, every day, it's full. They're out there staying healthy,
That's a good.
and they're doing it in the early mornings, in the evenings primarily. But, I mean, it's a good way for us old farts to, us old folks, to stay in shape.
I had to tell you,
I
Mr.
Got the
Mayor,
needs for it.
that
I understand.
I was out there Saturday, and there was some young kids out there Saturday. So
They're working with the youth, they're trying to work with the youth
bring 'em
league
in
too,
and
so they'll.
teach them, yes, sir.
Yeah. So,
Okay, I'd like to ask Mr. Felix to come up and talk about how we afford this
well,
project.
before you do that, I wanna mention one more, maybe I got it already. Let me just check a note here. I wanna thank you, Victoria, for the work. Thank the staff. I know this isn't easy, coming up with projected numbers, and in the past, the first phase, you did very, very well, with the projected numbers, and I think we've seen some good results. I'm looking forward to this being approved by council, and I'm looking forward to, saving energy, saving money, and providing, great facilities for the community. The other thing, the big thing this doesn't address is we still got a park south of town we gotta create from literally dust. So that's gonna be another ongoing expense that we need to be aware of, so. Anything else?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I don't know, I can ask Felix just as well. The 1.5 million, that's the grant we got for the water irrigation, right?
9.
The well and stuff?
Well, the irrigation,
Roger.
the reorientation of Howard Field, the ADA pathways.
Yes.
Forget
Football
anything?
field.
Football field, thanks.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Victoria. Good job, staff. And partners, good job.
And commission, whoever was involved in those things too.
Yeah, Parks Commission and other folks, yeah.
Victoria gets to talk about all the sparkly fun stuff. I get to have the fun time and pay for it. Because obviously this is not a small amount. We've run some preliminary numbers of looking at 15 or 20-year bond issue timeframe. This is something we do want to route for that long. When you get to the budget, when we get to the budget presentation, we've already plugged in an estimate for the 15-year option. We would look at a public or private placement. The advantage of a private placement is the fact of the issuance costs are less. But we're budgeting for a public just in case that is the best way to go. Last one we did for the current Schneider project that we're paying for, we went through the options that we had, and private placement was best, and so that's what we did. But if the market can't handle a private placement, or it's not there and a public offer will be better to do, and we get better rates at that, we will do that. We will try to include a 10-year call option depending on the premium we have to pay. It's finance, so options cost money. We did run out the 15-year annual debt service and 20-year annual debt service. There's a 4% estimate for the 15-year and a 4.25% for the 20-year estimate, and we come to about 2.225 million per year, principal and interest for the 15-year, and just under 1.9 million for the 20-year. We did plug in the coverage ratio based off the estimates for revenues, and next year we'd have a 9 times coverage ratio. That is the amount of pledged revenues over the annual debt service. The council-approved fiscal policy currently requires a 6 times coverage. So this is leaving us plenty of room for any future downturns the economy have and things like that. So we also plugged in that's our actual pledged revenues. Obviously, as they discussed, a portion of this is in the airport, but when putting the budget together, and because we'll wait to get final numbers on bid numbers for the projects, the airport fund will be contributing towards it, although those are not pledged revenues. So when putting together the coverage ratio, that's not included. Be happy to answer any question. Nope.
Well, I just got a question for you too. Explain to the council and the general public why a 10-year call option may be a good thing.
A 10-year call option at any time is a good thing. There are 2 reasons you will want to do it. You can do it like we've done in the past. We actually have extra revenues in. We can retire all the debt, just pay it off. It's done. We have revenue available, we can pay it off. We did that with the police station bonds. We paid those off early. The next series bonds, we also paid off early.
And that saves you the interest in the
Save us the
intervening
interest
years.
going down in future years. Plus, if you do a public placement, you will have a tiered coupon rate. So you may pay 2% on the bonds that are due in 5 years and 5% on the bonds that are due in 20 years. So you'll actually be paying off early the higher interest rate options as well, higher interest rate bonds as well. The second option, and we've done this as well, is rates in 10 years could be noticeably less than where they're at right now when we issue. And you'll look at a present value savings. In fact, we're carrying on the books the actual savings we did by refinancing the other 2 series of bonds. The bonds we just paid off in January were refinancing of 2 other bond series. And on that series, we saved $500,000 in interest payments by net savings by refinancing them early.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For phase one, what was our, I want to say we went to 20, but what was our annual debt service? How many years? And then what's the bond payment for that?
It was 17 million, 10 years, and I want to say 1.1, 1.2 million. We got a 2.68% interest rate. What we did with that one and what we would do with this one is we gave out 3 options. We gave it a 7-year option, a 10-year option, and a 15-year option. We reviewed the interest rates, and the sweet spot was the 10-year option. And because it's 10 years, there's no call option on it.
And then the second question on the debt we just paid off, what's the annual savings on that? I want to say it was 2.7-ish or?
Well, that when we refinanced the bonds, we structured them to pay off like the original series were going to. In 2001, we paid off, kind of paid off what was the original first series, and this year we paid off the second series. We went from about 2.2 million to about 1.2 million to next year, they're gone.
Thank you, Felix.
Hi, David. So I know residential interest rates are very high compared to where we were. Is that the same with these types of interest rates?
Yeah,
So
these
what are we
interest rates
looking
are
at?
going up. For those of you who know, Tom Hocking has been our financial advisor for many, many years. I know 2 of you, he's presented to 2 of you before. I found out a couple weeks ago that he has retired, but he has recommended somebody that he's worked with in prior years. I've talked to him on the phone. He's going to meet with us next week to look at possibly bringing him under contract. So he did a bond issue last week, and that morning, interest rates were changing 0.05% in the morning when they're trying to get the bond issue done. They had a successful sale, but he said it's gone up almost a percentage point over the last 30 days.
So 3.5, 4 then?
So he when I asked him my rate estimates for using for the forecasting, he said those were good rates to use. He
3.5
said if
to
you're
4.
looking at rate, issuing in June, July timeframe, those are the rates he would use. The rate that he did was actually the 2.68% that we had done a couple years ago was the rate that they ended up selling that issue for last week.
Okay.
Mr.
But they're
Bertucci.
constantly changing.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and along the lines of the Mayor Pro Tem's questions, what we're seeking from the council today is the ability to proceed with negotiations on the financing deal, not only for the fact that interest rates may continue to go up during the present in the present environment, but also, I think everybody heard the inflation numbers this morning, and that's going to impact cost of materials and contracts as well. So we would like the council's nod to go ahead and proceed with getting this done as soon as possible.
Go ahead and
And the other point I wanted to make is, we discussed the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant that's being included in this. This project does not preclude us from continuing to pursue other grants to offset these costs, but they will not be included in the financing. Any grants we get would go towards payment of the next year or two's debt service. So we would still be able to save based on that.
Okay. And then once negotiated, it's a 30-day lock?
Pretty much it's that time. There's not a, this is not like the financing bid, which they'll give us a 2-week lock or a 30-day lock. This is that's the day you go, that's the day you get the rate. That's the plus of having a negotiated sale.
Right.
You can have more of a lock in the rate, whereas if you're going to do a public issue, although, they're double tax exempt for Arizona residents, for most of them, you do not necessarily get that lock. It's what is the market that day that you put it on the market.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so back to the city manager's comment. Are there any objections as to why we shouldn't proceed and see this on an action item in the future?
I have no objection. I
Okay.
think it's a great
I don't hear
project.
any objections, Chuck, so you got your
Okay.
guidance.
Appreciate it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both.
One last question, if I could, Mr. Mayor.
There's always one more in there.
Yes.
So one thing I liked was the Snyder, the original Snyder project. It was start, finish, and we were ready to go. Do we have a timeline if we started tomorrow about approximately how long all this was going to take?
We do, Mr. Benning. I believe we're looking at about 18 months.
And that would be from June, right? June or July?
June, July.
In
When the
July.
bond is active. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
We'll hold them to it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the
Thank you
council.
very much.
I know which one does which now, too.
And next up, we got our first budget briefing of the year. I know everybody's just sitting on pins and needles waiting for this one. And who's gonna do it? Jen, are you up? Okay. Bedazzle us, young lady. Now that David's put us to sleep, you can wake us up.
Mayor and members of council, we're in the middle of budget season. This is my favorite time of year. And as you said, this is the first of many of your budget work sessions. So when we kick off the budget season, we like to get a good look at the revenue. So as you've already discussed earlier, in December, our local TPT was 9.6 over fiscal year 21 and 18.6 over budget. In January, we were 9.6 over fiscal year 21 and 17.7% over budget. In February, we just received the numbers. We were at 9.75% over fiscal year 21 and again 17.7% over budget. So our revenue is looking really good, but even though we're going to still maintain our conservative stance when we project for fiscal year 23. We get a good review.
One other point, Mr. Mayor, wanted to make is typically we would start the budget with revenue projections, and that's why Jen is giving you these numbers. But the league has just come out and told us that there will be a delay in receiving the state shared revenue estimates, which we normally don't anticipate till May anyway, but we need those to be able to give you a better picture on the revenue estimates. So when that comes, we'll certainly have that at your next budget work session.
Absolutely. We also have revenue on the next budget work session as well. So after we do revenue, we move on to debt, and this is where I'm going to turn it over to David again.
What percentage increase are we, when we say a conservative approach to our revenue forecasting? What percentage are we going from last budget to this budget? What percentage are we using?
I think I mentioned it earlier, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Benning. We've been averaging, over 9 and 17, so we're projecting 7.5, so below that right now in terms of our own sales tax growth.
I guess that means they get to put you back to sleep, huh? So just for background, for those of you who are new, we do finance certain capital projects. We do try and match the financing to the life cycle. We either do a lease purchase for items like vehicles, refuse trucks, big fire equipment, things like that, and anything that lasts more than 5 years. You don't want to have a 2-year life cycle on something and finance it for 5 to 10 years. That does not make any fiscal sense. So obviously, short-term lease purchase, we go to a public bid process for that. As you know from the last budget process, we do a reimbursement resolution at the beginning. We do the financing at the year end. Playing into this with the revenues, with the vehicle changes, and just finding out last week that the refuse trucks are not going to make it here this year, we're not going to do the financing this year. We're looking at cashing everything out, so that's good news on that side.
But just a second, operational question. So we got trash trucks that are in need of replacement, and we're gonna have to extend them another year for use. Is that what impact's that gonna have on budget?
Well, Mr. Mayor, most of these items have already been included in last year's budget, so they're simply a carryover from
Yeah, but
previous.
what I'm talking about is if we obviously have a large piece of equipment and it was due to be turned in, there's gonna be parts, pieces,
Well,
et cetera.
yeah, they wouldn't be on the replacement
Maintenance.
list if we weren't experiencing, increased O&M costs
Yeah, already.
to maintain those vehicles. I'm hoping it's not a year, Mayor. Sharon, I don't think it looks like that.
What I was looking for you to tell me is the
But-
O&M costs have been considered in or included in the
Yes,
budget. That's what I wanted you to tell me.
That is correct.
Okay.
Well, and Mr. Mayor, members of council, we are looking at July or August for the truck deliveries, the
Okay.
last estimate
All right.
versus June. So we're
Okay.
looking at like about a 2
So it's
month
not a
delay.
whole year. Okay,
Hopefully
good.
that continues, but
Okay.
we
good.
know that everything's in the way. We did pay off a lease at the end of June. I mean, in fact, we've got one lease that covers 4 funds and one lease for the refuse fund only. That's the 2 trucks that we financed last year. That is all the lease purchase debt we have outstanding right now. We also have the current Schneider bond issue, and we've included the proposed Schneider bond issue in the budget. That is currently all the debt we have outstanding. So as you can see, the payoff of that one lease has caused most of the funds to see some pretty big drops in the debt service. We do have $250,000 plugged into the CIF. That is the estimate that we're putting in for the bond issuance costs. Since the proceeds will go in the capital improvements fund, the issuance costs will come out of that. And as you can see, the current roll-off of the note we paid off in January, the estimated 15-year, $2.225 million new debt service estimate, the actual debt service in the capital improvements fund is going up less than $950,000 a year based off our estimate. If we get better rates, obviously it will go up less than that. So as you can see, that's more is coming off. When we do have the final numbers, as I mentioned, we will have a transfer from the airport fund to the debt service fund to pay the airport's portion for the lighting project that's getting done. Of course, if we can get some grants for some of that, which would be nice, then that will just cut down and help cover those debt service costs as well. Any questions on the debt service?
What? Oh, no, there are no questions.
Here we go, kind of recap of what we've done. Schneider Phase 2, $25 million we'd actually finance. That includes the bond issuance costs. We've done, those are already mentioned, kind of these items, so. Let Jen wake you back up.
Capital improvement request. So this is a complete capital list. It's prioritized based on new purchases, improvements, safety, and needs. We expect to move some of these items into the general fund, so the final recommended list will definitely look different than what you see today. So we'll start with the North Garden improvements. The design is set for fiscal year '22 with construction in '23, and we'll also be applying for some grants to reduce that cost. Let's see, the city is looking to
Can I
purchase.
ask you a question, just
Of course.
because I noticed something else further on? There's another North Garden project improvements where we're getting HERF money as well. It was 240, or 290K in HERF money. Is that part of the money you're talking about taking out of the 2.5 mil? Or is that, is the total cost more than the 2.5 mil?
You're looking at the carryover for 289. That's for the garden design, and then construction for 2.5.
Yeah, but I'm trying to look at the whole project. So this is, you're showing me here the construction on this slide?
Yes, sir.
And the other one is the design, so the total cost would be in excess of the 2.
2 3/4.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, got it. Now I'm straight. Thank you.
So the city would like to purchase a property on Fry Boulevard. We didn't put an estimated cost here because we're still waiting on the appraisal. As soon as we get the appraised value, we'll add that, obviously, to the list. The former dispatch area would like to be, well, not the area would like to be remodeled, but we would like to remodel the former dispatch area into an updated EOC. Currently, there's only one restroom for fleet, so we would like to add another restroom.
Remind me what EOC means. I'm sorry.
Emergency Operating Center.
Thank you. I was blanking there for a second.
The whole room. And Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, we're talking about an EOC that has real-time, camera and the ability to really function as an EOC where we can see what's going on the ground at that emergency,
Thank you.
from the building. So it'll be very helpful in those events.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if I'm forgetting, what property are you referring to on Fry Boulevard?
Hate to discuss that, right?
Well,
Well,
it's,
we need to,
it's there.
actually, we probably need to have an executive session to cover that, because
I would love
should we
to.
show we're interested, the price may go up precipitously.
Okay, thank you. I
The
want to
next-
make sure I didn't forget something that was
Happy to brief
big
you
like
on it.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
if you want to stop in and see Chuck individually, that's fine too. And then we can discuss whether or not we're gonna purchase or not.
Okay,
It'll come up in executive session.
great. Thank you.
The next three items on the list, the Cove stairs, the City Hall stairs, and the diving board stands, are safety issues. The UHF and the VHF radio equipment have reached end of life. The fleet tire carousel, the current system for the tires, they're lacking space, so there's increased chances of injury also when removing tires from the top row, and they're also encroaching on the exit door, so fire hazard a little bit there. And then for fleet, the outside lift, the current lift is over 20 years old and has not been used because it cannot pass inspection. So one will reduce labor, vehicle downtime, and rework. For the PD auditorium and conference room upgrade, we'd like to add video conferencing similar to what is in the fire department. The dive pool deck resurface has reached end of life. And then we'd like to update the city manager conference room. This slide is all the carryover for fiscal year '22. So the EMS substation construction is expected to complete in June, but we do need to carry over some of the items to close out in July. The 2 vehicles for fire department and procurement, they're, as you know, all the vehicles are coming in a little later than expected, so those are going to carry over. The sports complex restrooms are in design currently. The Veterans Memorial Park well and irrigation improvements have been moved to the Schneider project. The Garden Canyon Linear Park Phase 2 is in progress. Solar cover at the PD is now a Schneider project. And then the ACO expansion design is in progress.
Go ahead.
Real quick, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The solar covered at the PD and the irrigation improvements, the grant was put into the Snyder project or help subsidize it with the $1.9 million, whatever. The other money that was budgeted for it, what are we using that for? For both the solar cover at the PD, the 200,000, and the roughly 1 million from the well.
You mean the match? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, the match for it.
I don't understand your
So
question.
in the Snyder project, we took the $1.5 million grant and put it towards the Snyder project to reduce the price. But we still have budgeted $3.5 million to carry over. So we still have roughly $2 million we didn't spend budgeted for it, capital improvement. And then for the solar cover, we have 200,000 not unaccounted for, carried over that we didn't spend on the solar for the police station for the police station. So what are we diverting those to or using those towards, if anything?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Bennett, I understand what he's asking.
Do you? Okay, well, that's one of
So,
us.
we didn't want to put our eggs before, or the horse before the cart.
Roger.
So these were projects that were budgeted in the current fiscal year that we're in now. So we need to show that they would carry over if we weren't going to do the Schneider project. So now staff needs to sit down and evaluate the 3.5 million for the well and irrigation improvements. That included the 1.5 million from the grant and the 1.5 million match. So we'll have a conversation with David whether that money gets allocated then to pay for towards the bond, or if we reallocate it to other projects.
Thank you.
Okay. Now I think I understand what's going on. Okay. Anything else?
Save some money, so.
Yeah, save money is always good. Sir?
The sports complex bathrooms, is that SEER? Is included, or is that different?
Domingo Paez and two other ones.
Which one?
John?
The sports complex should be right over here, right?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a budget, and what we're having to do is do site plans for the designs, and we're starting at the end of Tacoma Street and working our way up as far as we can take the first $500,000. We think that with those, we chose a prefabricated designs that will come from a factory, which is less expensive than having the site built restrooms, and we think we can get a restroom facility at SEER, Domingo Paez that will include a snack bar area, and then a 4-bathroom or 2-bathroom, 4 at Arbenz, and
Mr. Mayor, Council, it's the.
You need to come up so they can hear you.
Good try, John.
Yep.
Nice try, John.
Mr. Mayor, Council, it's the restrooms at Domingo Paez Soccer, the restrooms at Domingo Paez Softball with a concession stand, and then those are both 4 restroom stalls and a 2 restroom stall at the OICC pickleball courts to serve both Arbenz Field and the pickleball courts.
Okay.
thank you.
Nice.
Any more questions on carryover?
One more question.
Okay.
So the carryover from 2022, right? I feel like there's some stuff missing. Like, are there other things that
You'll see some in the other funds as well.
Comment,
I didn't see some, but maybe I'll ask later. Okay.
Okay.
comment Herfin or something.
So the next 2 slides show a complete prioritized list for the fleet vehicles. As you touched upon earlier, fleet has an extensive process when calculating the replacement and the new vehicle needs. And this is the one for fiscal year '23. The vehicle ordering time is coming up mid-May. So when we present to you the final list with the balanced budget in May, we would like to proceed with the ordering. Anything ordered can be canceled at any time, but just to give you a heads up, like tractors and mowers have an 18-month lead time. So we're trying to prevent what happened with the refuse trucks and get them in faster. So this list will be changed as well as we move some of the vehicles from CIP into general fund. Councilmember Bay.
Thank you. With the vehicles, the EMS vehicles, the ambulances, et cetera, those are fully staffed, the new EMS substation we're building, or what are we doing with that?
Mayor Mueller, Councilman Benning, we have current ambulance for staff and the replacement ambulances for ambulance that have run their life cycle.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Thank you, Jim.
Next is the HERF fund. So the top on the list is the annual street maintenance, which is a strategic plan item. In the middle, you'll see the prioritized vehicle list for HERF. And then on the bottom, you'll see some carryover items. Councilmember Benny.
I'm sorry. I asked my previous question to talk about the HERF funds, or the HERF improvements, the annual street maintenance. As with 1.5, as we've been shown through the, at least the last 3 years, what all that would encompass on fixing on the streets. I'd like to see if we could possibly take some of the savings from doing the Snyder project from the police department and the water well and divert some of those funds for more street maintenance. Just as one of those suggestion things from looking at the budget.
So, just so I understand your suggestion, obviously we got 1.5 for annual street maintenance. How much are the other projects
Even if we jump it up to 2.5.
Yeah, but where are you proposing we get that money from? You said,
From the solar panels for the police station, which saves, I want to say, roughly 200,000.
yeah, but we're not gonna, the thing is, that's gonna be savings over time. We're not necessarily gonna have that this year, but Chuck, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Benning, that process is actually occurring and is occurring even as we speak. Because you have your annual street maintenance project is going on right now, and that involves fixes and, seals and crack filling and all those various things. But you have a major street maintenance project going on Charleston Road. This year, and then, of course, you have the Avenida Escuela improvements as well. This year, I think we were able to fund that out of HERF because we had significant carryover in HERF. In the future, we'll be looking to augment our PERF street maintenance budget with savings in the capital improvements fund going forward for we'll use that for major street maintenance projects and continue our annual street maintenance out of HERF.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Just real quick comment on the street maintenance. There is a schedule, right, and it's listed out, timeline, where and when, right, it's available for people to look at.
Sure.
I just want to make sure that people know that.
Well, the thing is, it wouldn't hurt to have our city public works director to brief at a work session what those are, so we know, because
I would appreciate that.
I think we all would appreciate that. So Sharon, you gotta task her there, young lady.
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, we can
I'm not trying
probably
to make more work for anybody.
We can probably do that during the
She can handle
L&M work session that you have in the budget too, looking forward as well.
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, members of council, I would also note that we are working through the Sierra Vista MPO to potentially update that study this year. It's hard to believe it's been 5 years since our initial pavement maintenance study that we did. So we are looking at doing that, a major update to that in the next year.
Thank you so much.
So the airport fund is healthy. We have several capital items in the top with vehicles in the center, and actually that's an error. So instead of a gator, they'll be requesting a utility cart for $30,000. And then we do still have hope for the last two items, so we're going to carry them over to fiscal year '23.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we're working very diligently to try to locate the Forest Service here on a more permanent basis, which will be, of course, of great value during the fire season, and as well as have some permanent party Forest Service people here. And we're working with congressional delegation, and Tony's working and Sharon with Forest Service on siting and looking at a project for that. Mm-hmm.
That's great. And are those new hangars or to add to what okay.
LTAF fund, most of the items for LTAF are carryover items, as obviously vehicles are still a problem. And then, as you know, there's a major delay. The Spirit of Equests is the top, and then several carryover.
And what is that?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
The Spirit of Equests
Yeah,
is
what
the
is that type of a
larger.
bus? It's a what?
It's the larger bus.
Okay, so that's the more than 17 passenger bus.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Sounds like a cruise line.
I'm waiting for something nice. It's the
So we're
Spirit
getting
of
ready to go bus-
It's
a
a,
bus
it's a,
tour
it's a
somewhere.
beautiful name, yes.
There movies on that?
And most of those are grant funded.
I'm looking for like something special.
Yes.
All of them.
All of them are grant funded with 80/20. Refuse fund, this list may change as we balance the funds, as will the sewer. So the top needs for the chipper, the pressure, and I can't say that, the road turner rebuild. The center will be the vehicle list, and then the carryover, the two refuse trucks that David mentioned. Final fund is the sewer. We have an EOP needs assessment study in the general fund for fiscal year '23, so this will help create the capital list for '24. But the top three The influent flow meters, the anoxic basin, and the crane clarifier, these can't wait for 24, so we added them to 23. The middle, the bulldozer and gator are the prioritized vehicle list, and then we will carry over the polymer feed system for wastewater. So I'd like to remind the council that your next budget work session is scheduled for April 26th. This is when we'll go over revenue, personnel, and O&M. It's going to be a big one. With that, I'd answer any questions.
I do have a question. How many gators does the city own? Because there were 5 listed in this, and the one was taken out. Jen said one wasn't going to be bought, but
Utility cart.
Are they aging quickly? Are they popular? Are they being completely used? Or can we get one for the mayor to drive around in? I mean, what?
Council needs 6 of them. I'll take a razor.
Yeah, sure, we get one for the mayor. Yeah,
Take a side by side.
That was rhetorical, but I mean,
Cheaper than a
thing is, I know they're critical, especially in parks and maintenance, to get around in and out of things quickly and carry equipment. But I thought it was just odd that we needed so many at one time.
Mr. Mayor, actually, we worked with Larry over in Fleet, and we're talking about how to possibly downsize a bit our fleet in the Parks, Recreation, and Library Services department, and trading them out for things that really move people and equipment well, with, extending Avenida Escuela over to the park area.
Yeah.
That's a really quick way for us
Yeah,
to stage and be more efficient in the way that we manage our maintenance.
Understand that.
Yes.
Okay, and I know there's also all kinds of specialized tractors and other equipment as well. But I know that all that stuff that I've seen is pretty much near life cycle, so I wasn't gonna comment about that. So, any other comments, questions for Jen? Yes, ma'am.
Well, not really maybe for you or I don't know who. Because we're going to upgrade the buses so that we can take other forms of payment and we're not dealing with the change and but we first have to change, right? Don't we have to go back and look at how much we're charging and when do we do that?
Well, that's another question, Chuck. We haven't, it's supposed to be every 5 years we look at the transit plan. How often is it?
Well, if you'll recall, it was about 5 years ago, I think now, that we proposed a rate increase at that time, and there's certainly some federal regulations that get involved in that, and after that discussion, I think the council actually lowered the fare at that point in time.
Bottom line is, how often do we have to update the transit plan, Sharon? I know it's...
Yeah, the short-range transit plan was just updated within the last 6 months, I think. Went through the Sierra Vista MPO.
Yep.
And if you had to rely on farebox to run the transit system, we would not be running the transit system.
I know we have to look at increasing it though.
Well, we need to, one of the recommendations, and I think this is what you're talking about, one of the recommendations was to look at the fares and
increase them.
right, but I mean, like Chuck said, we just don't know until council has that discussion what we're going to do, because that was suggested last time and we lowered them. So I mean, we'll probably not be looking at that again, but I think that's what you're asking is when that discussion.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right, it was like 5 different, 5-point plan. We were talking about fare box changes, we were talking about increasing the fares, we were talking about equipping the buses with a GPS, so people could have an app and know when the bus is gonna arrive. There were, I think, 4 or 5 different ones in that plan. I don't have the.
And I think
And
around.
this was all discussion among the MPO.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And that needs to be shared with the entire council, because obviously I'm sure there's 3 other people up here at least that are wondering what the heck is going on. So that needs to be shared with council at a work session, Chuck.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we definitely need to do that. Farebox is always interesting with transit because of a concept called elasticity of demand. And it's one of those services that when you raise fares, you lower your ridership, and it may not even pay off, financially to even do that. So those are the types of concepts that we're dealing with transit.
So that's another item for work session. Okay. Anything else? Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here today and look forward to hearing from you in a couple of weeks, I guess, for the next phase. Now, while we basically end the discussion, I'm gonna take a minute and open the meeting to the public. If anybody has any comments specifically on the budget, I would open the meeting to the public. Seeing nobody coming to talk specifically on the budget, I'll close the meeting to the public. So we'll now move on to let's see, recent trips, meetings, and future meetings. We talked about a couple things already, Victoria, about we need to have a discussion on the transit recommendations. And what was that? There was another one we wanted to have
Street maintenance.
Street maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we need to schedule those. Or you have anything scheduled in the near future other than our regular budget stuff?
Budget in the executive report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
We'll add transit recommendations and street maintenance to the list.
okay. I haven't been to any meetings, although we're pretty full up visually today on the computer with talking about the future of the campus at the College of Applied Science and Technology for the University of Arizona here in town. We had some conversations there. Tony, what's it called? The process? Jay Roos. There was a discussion there too, and that seems to be getting to the final stages, so that should be ready for publication, and I would think we would have some type of briefing for the entire council as well at some point in the future, so they understand what it is, what it's supposed to do, and where the challenges may lay in the future planning dealing with the installation, the Fort Huachuca. I'm trying to think what else. Has anybody else got any plans, future plans, etc.? I want to thank Councilman Rodriguez for working with me with the youth commission, and we're trying to come up with a better animal, and it's going to be different than the standard commission. So we're working together on that. I really appreciate his help. Anybody else?
We're talking
comments overall?
meetings or?
We're talking meetings, future meetings right now.
Weren't we discussing, the lack of volunteerism within our various commissions, and we were going to do some work session on that?
Yeah, there should be a work session coming up on the re-energizing I'll call it re-energizing the commissions, and we've probably got a couple. We have some that are still functioning very well, but we have a couple that we need to get them
Fired up, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the Parks and Rec met last week, just to update everybody on some of the things they're working on and talking about. We're looking at, or Parks and Rec is looking at the dog ordinances along with park definitions, facility definitions. So they'll have a suggestion hopefully in the next month or two coming before council on changing definition. What's a big community park? What's a small park? What's a ball field, etc. And then the dog ordinances is throughout our policy, so they're trying to clean that up. An invitation to everybody, we're doing a rock placement, Soldier Creek Park at 14 May at 8 a.m. I think we finally locked in. So if y'all want to come help move big rocks, little rocks, rocks all over Soldier Creek Park, come out. And then just some updates. I'm glad we're talking about it when we talked about Snyder. For everyone that doesn't know, so toward Arizona, we had 708 people paid to participate. 658 actually checked in. The park, if you didn't notice, we had 72 small RVs, 18 large RVs, and 63 tents. It was if you went out there, you know what I mean. It was neat. It was pretty neat. So they already want to come back, and that's what we're working on. But I do have to give. And I'm going to do it again on Thursday. Jolene Fernard from Huachuca Mountain Elementary School, she had her whole class, the whole classes were out there from Huachuca Mountain, holding up signs, welcoming them. It was pretty neat. She posted a video if anybody wants to go check it out. But it was a good event, so I appreciate Laura and what all her team did and the rest of the staff for making this happen, because I know everybody was involved because it was huge. So. And that was our meeting.
Yeah, thank you. thanks for reminding me too, is that some time ago I'd spoken with our Parks Director and Chuck about relooking rules for unmanned aerial vehicles.
Roger.
And potentially putting a pad that's a little closer than the airfield, our miniature aircraft field that we operate. And have they done anything with that?
We looked at the ordinance and the regulation, regulation, I'm in army again. Not the pad though, but I'll take that to them and I'll get that added to our next meeting.
To me, there's a couple of places that are closer into town that should be safe to operate as long as they follow the FAA rules and the practices on the landing and takeoff pads.
I'll get that added to our meeting.
Okay, I appreciate that. Anybody else?
Comments?
Okay, get an update?
Yeah, it's a update. So the bill on the transportation that was in the House got approved, went to the Senate. They want to change it. It's still up in the air, and I haven't heard anything as of yet.
We're talking state legislation.
State legislation, sorry, not federal. State, so I'm still waiting. I had a meeting last week with Senator Gowan and Senator Fan and some policy directors about it to try and work it out and get some sort of compromise for statewide rural transportation funding. And I'll keep y'all updated, but as of now, we have no idea what's happening. So it could be 500 million or it could be 55 million.
Next year's transportation.
That's next year's transportation money from the state for rural transportation.
Okay. So, anybody got any good news?
Well, it's not dead, so that is good
Well, that's
news.
good news.
Yeah.
It's still
still alive.
moving, yeah. Okay.
Some
So,
comments that came up that I need to mention, I forgot to mention. Real quick, I know everyone's like, we've been here for a while. Where in I know we have the Parks Plan, we have our current stuff we're doing, Schneider, the Cove Kitchen, where does that fall into place, the update on that? Where are we at with that? The kitchen inside the
you're
Cove.
talking about the rental,
Yeah.
the rental property.
Yeah.
Back area.
Where's the latest on that? Like, where are we at?
Councilmember Rodriguez, I believe those items were included in the current year capital
Okay.
budget,
That
so.
too.
Like, that was the last thing we did with it, was like, we improved the kitchen, right? And it was like open for somebody that wants it available, or?
Go ahead.
Got it now.
Okay,
I'm
now
on
you
the
got
same
it.
page now.
Okay.
Councilmember Rodriguez, that is the snack bar area.
Right.
There was completely nothing in there. So we do have appliances in there, and we looked at, whether or not to go out and try to attract another vendor to do that. We are going to be operating that in-house.
Okay.
And hope to get it up and running this summer.
Okay.
That's our busy season.
Okay.
I think that's the only way that we can really control to make sure that is open when we're open.
Okay, thank you very much.
you.
That was on my mind, and I needed to, I think it was a good time to ask.
Good point.
I think you mentioned earlier about the park, our upgrade to the track and the football field, right? People do use that every morning and every night, right? So I really, really recommend that we do leave it open as much as possible. That's very important to me in our city, and I know people use it, even as terrible as it is right now, they still use it. So I don't want that to change for anybody. And I don't want anybody to feel locked out. I agree with what you mentioned earlier. That was kind of on my notes too to say. And I'm assuming we'll still have, once that's done, we'll still have the same agreement with the school district that they can use our fields, right, for free, as long as they transport the children there. Because I know Buena doesn't have any lights at their baseball field, so once we have a nice field, it'd be a good one for them to use, and it'll be the same kind of agreement, right?
Yes.
Okay. Also, just since I have the Schneider awesome team here, right? I mean, I don't think the school district has approached you guys with doing a project for them, but I don't know, how hard would it be to fix their football field, and is that something that we're looking into?
Go see them.
It's
And I just want to make sure that is in the work, that's been mentioned, and I don't want to start a whole nother session, but just that it's,
Chuck,
That's on our radar, Councilman Rodriguez, and we'll have to have separate discussions with the school district.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Anybody else? All right, so thank you very much. I know it was a little longer than we normally go. I appreciate the time, effort, and the discussion, and more budget to look forward to. Meeting's adjourned.